Hello everyone, this is Mini Ninjas here. For today's video, we're actually going to be looking at a few products from a relatively new maker in the space, being the DL Customs Volume 1 Superhero Custom Head Sculpt sets. All letters included, so basically we have A, B, and C, which, aside from the sticker you'll see on the side of the boxes, you wouldn't really be able to tell what's going on there, so I'll explain that as we go on. However, just to mention, they're all based around this particular toy here, being the Ultimate Gohan superhero figure, and are meant specifically for this release. Before we get to the head sculpts though, let's take a very brief look at the original toy itself, which was actually what I would call a budget toy release, as the price point I believe was around either 40 or 45, which I believe was the price point I purchased mine at. As you can see here, doesn't really come with too much, 6 inch tall by the way, or just a smidge over 6 inches, and in terms of the faceplates, the toy only came with 3 faceplates total. The neutral one that's on the figure itself, this grimacing one here, and a bit of a yelling one. In terms of quality of the faceplates, honestly, they're not bad. Very clean decals and everything on there. No noticeable paint issues. It's just, there's not much there. To start off our review though, we're actually going to be going backwards in terms of letters, looking at the third one, C, the Secret Realm of God Awakening, which as you can see, retail for about $37 overall. And in terms of what you're offered on that one, you have the base head itself, which is of course the black hair, as well as 5 different sets of faces. Starting off with a bit of a neutral one that's looking off to the side, and of course matching grimacing and yelling faces. In terms of the general appearance and how they handle it, the aesthetic is a little more close to the original Dragon Ball Z look rather than the more recent Super look, meaning of course while you have everything a lot more angular, you also have slightly more scrunched together facial features. In terms of how the face and everything assembles, it's the exact same way as they use for the official figure, so basically you take off both the bangs and the face at the same time, you pull the face down, put the new one in there into the bangs, and then return them both to the head. So generally speaking, fairly easy assembling. Fits in mostly smoothly on this one, although it is worth noting on the hair, it does seem to be painted over a skin tone base, so there might be a little bit of chipping. I noticed on the bangs, or on the edges of the sharp points, there is a little chipping here or there on mine. Hopefully not in yours, if you look at this later. In terms of the faceplates themselves, all in all, a quick demonstration of how they look on there. Generally speaking, not too much complaint. I do kind of prefer the older look, so I'm rather partial to these ones. And the faceplates, as long as you put them on correctly, I could have pushed the face on that one a little further up, they do tend to fit on pretty well without too much garbage, I would say. What I would note is, like I said, there might be a little bit of a hair or a paint chipping here or there, particularly notable on the black one. But that's easily fixed, I would say. A little touch-up couldn't hurt on that one. The decals themselves are handled pretty nicely. They're nice and clean on all counts. I would say, if anything, the sculpting is maybe a bit smooth or less detailed on things like the ears, though. So that is something that might be worth noting. Not as much of a deal breaker, but it's just something worth noting. Next one up, we're going to be looking at a Realm of Anger, aka Volume 1 Type B, the Super Saiyan head sculpts. $34.99, actually a little less than the one we just talked about, because while most of the head sculpt here is relatively the same, and by relatively I mean it is the exact same thing in yellow for the most part, and the decals being slightly different to be Super Saiyan, it does have one faceplate left, because the last one, which was the red-eyed one just before kind of beasting out for lack of a better term, is not present on this particular one. In terms of how the paint and such is handled, I'd say the faceplates and details are mostly the same in there. You're looking at virtually the same sculpt, to be totally honest. The only thing I might say on that one is in terms of the seam line, it is a little more prevalent on this one than it was in the previous one, just because the color is not nearly as dark, so things will stand out a little more. Also, in terms of general colors, I'd honestly say it is actually a little more reminiscent to more recent releases, particularly the full-powered Super Saiyan Son Goku is be the most direct one, which, speaking of which, we're going to put that on screen right now because I got this after kind of recording. Generally, what I'm talking about by that is mostly plain colored hair, maybe a little bit of shading, fairly minimal around the bangs itself, otherwise it's a flat color. Not a bad choice, but it's just a different one. And just for a little added contrast, we're actually going to include the Mightiest Warrior, aka Demoniacal Fit's Son Gohan Ultimate Form, which is also basically the third party one, just for reference sake. And last but not least, this will be the third and final one, A Desperate Situation. Volume 1A, aka the Beast Up form. The one that is also the most expensive of the set, because it is also using the most plastic of it all with that kind of hairdo. It is worth noting that once you put this particular head on there, the overall height of the figure does jump quite a bit on there, actually reaching roughly about 7 inches tall, which I don't have the official one to compare to because it's not released yet, but I imagine they'll be about equal on that one. What I do need to mention though on this particular head sculpt, or at least on my copy of it, is that the bangs on the front don't fit particularly flush with the rest of the head, even with the faceplates out of place. It seems to be a little more flat and not exactly matching the same curve. Maybe some heat will correct that, so I'll have to try that later off camera. But all in all, it does have a little gapping on the side that can be adjusted with a little force, but will be needing to be constantly adjusted when you switch faceplates. Which, speaking of which, this toy, unfortunately, this head sculpt comes with only 3 of them, much like the original figure. The neutral, that crazy look, and the yelling look. Now, in terms of how they look, honestly, they fit on there pretty nicely, aside from the little gapping issue I mentioned. The decals are pretty good on there, no complaints, and everything moves on the actual head and neck peg without too much hassle. It's actually a nice fit on there, nice and tight. Overall, I still like them. Now, as you can kind of figure, even despite a few issues here and there, I would still say I'm relatively happy with this purchase of the head sculpt sets, and I'll probably be using these for my own display here at home. However, I have to address that the price point for all of these does start adding up pretty fast if you want to collect it all. Now, while given it is about a third cheaper, that doesn't mean it's exactly cheap. Also, there is the small matter that there are some things, like the normal heads and the cape, that just don't have third-party equivalents at this point. Mind you, those also happen to be unfortunately attached to the most expensive figures of the set. Ultimately, this is honestly a test by Bandai and Tamashii Nations to really figure out to the consumers, how much are you willing to pay to get what you want for the extras? Take care, folks.